call that entire stretch from Jacksonville, Florida, to Wilmington, North Carolina, and some parts of Virginia, the Gullah Geechee corridor, the port of entry for the West Africans brought to these parts of the Americas in slavery. Now, I know you done read and heard all the stories about what happened to us when we first get to the South, how we got beat, how we got flogged, how we got our limbs cut off when we tried to run away. Oh yeah, all of them things happened, even some worse. But we as the people, there was nothing else they could do but keep the stories in their house, for singing the songs, for do their dance, for laugh, for make merry whenever they got a chance. That's how they survived. Now keep in mind, you had a few of them fellas that worked for the master because they were working for him in some special capacity. But for the average slave, on the many different plantations, they did endure harsh and severe mistreatment. But eventually, that too had to let up so that they can get the work done that they were brought to this side to do. Now, Boone Plantation, at one time, was just somebody's piece of land. Major John Boone, an Englishman, coming all the way from Barbados, and bringing along with him his own set of slaves from Barbados, acquired portions of that land through a land grant. And he was given 468 acres as a wedding gift after marrying Elizabeth Page, gifted to him by his father-in-law. Well, they decided to put us to work in three major crops: cotton, indigo, and rice. Now the cash crop for the Boone family actually was the indigo and the cotton. Now the rice that they grew was basically for plantation consumption. Now the indigo is that plant that produced the blue and purple dye. Real tedious process back in the day, because them fellas had to get up every morning and collect urine by the bucketfuls. The urine was used in the fermenting of the dye. Well, eventually Mrs. Boone falls sick, passes away. Master Boone passes away, and their son Thomas Boone inherits the plantation. Now Thomas kept that plantation just for a few years, and then he sold it to some Russian owners. From that point on, that plantation changed its hands several times, and then in the early 1800s, the Hallback family purchased Boone Hall. Mr. Hallback and his family, they were from Germany. Prior to coming to Boone Hall, he brought his entire family to Charleston, and when they got to the plantation, the slaves, under the Hallback family, were putting out and making over 1 million bricks a year, providing brick for many of our historic buildings, historic homes, historic churches, historic streets, historic sites, scattered all about Charleston. Not only Charleston, other cities across the state of South Carolina and outside the state of South Carolina. When we talk about historic brick made by the hands of slaves, on Boone Hall, they have 9 of the original brick cabins made by the hands of slaves. At one time, there were actually 27 brick cabins. 3 rows of 9 cabins each. But check this out. Only selected slaves were chosen to live in the brick cabin. You had to have a special skill. Because see, them cabins is right on the front yard of the master house. You had to have a special skill. Boatmaker, carpenter, the ironcutters, the blacksmiths, they made the gating chains, the butler, the maid, the cook, the carriage driver, the seamstress, the tailor, the gardener. All the fellows in their families, they were the ones selected to live in the brick cabin. But now, if you was just a regular old field slave, meaning you worked that cotton, the indigo, the tomatoes, the corn, the cabbage, the rice, then you would be living in what we call a board house. Your board house was half the size of that brick cabin. You had a dirt floor, no window, no fireplace. And your board house would be located way out in the field, good distance away from the master's house. And the only one thing that the board house and the brick house had in common was that anywhere from 2 to 3 families could be assigned to each one of those cabins at any given time. God, a people, a dialect. One of the oldest buildings on the plantation is the smokehouse. Most of y'all don't know if you're in a country person, you might not know what a smokehouse is, but a smokehouse on the plantation, a smokehouse was the houses where they used to cure the meat. We had no refrigeration. So what they used to do, they used to kill the wild game, deer, turkey, quail, duck, geese, hog, pig. We job was to clean the meat, gut that meat out, salt that meat down real heavy, cut it up in pieces, and then they had to hang the salted meat from the ceiling of the smokehouse. Now, smokehouses ain't had no windows. No windows. So them fellas would start a fire on the ground. That fire would burn for several hours, and the next process was to put the fire out and fan the smoke. a trough. You know what a trough is? That's where they feed the pigs, the long piece, where they sort of slop. We would have to go to the trough, gather our food from the trough to our hands to our mouth, eating fast. Why? Because you never knew when the bell was going to ring for the second time. Because once that bell rang